BookCast FM, bringing books to life, one cast at a time. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into a fascinating book, Dr. Anna Lembke's Dopamine Nation, Finding Balance in the Age of Indulgence.
Yeah, it's a really timely one. Our goal here is to unpack the core ideas, especially how they shed light on, addiction, pleasure, pain, all that stuff in our super stimulated world. We want to help you get a handle on these forces, maybe see how they affect, your own focus and engagement.
Absolutely. And Dr. Lembke, she's a psychiatrist, right? Addiction specialist at Stanford.
Okay.
She makes this compelling case that all this easy pleasure we have access to now, endless social media, sugary snacks, you name it, it creates this dopamine loop. But paradoxically, it seems to making us more anxious, maybe more depressed, less fulfilled.
Exactly. That's the core paradox she explores. This constant flood of reward messes with our brain's natural balance. So today, we'll dig into the why, the neuroscience behind it, but also, crucially, the how. How do we find balance? What are the strategies she suggests?
Good stuff. And look, if this conversation gets you thinking, we definitely recommend grabbing the full book, Dopamine Nation. We put a link in the description so you can support Dr. Lembke directly.
Definitely worth the read.
Okay, let's dive in. Part 1, understanding this Dopamine Nation. And it really starts with dopamine itself, this molecule.
Right. And what's really key, what Lembke stresses, is that dopamine isn't purely the molecule of pleasure like we often think. It's more the molecule of more. It drives desire, craving.
The wanting, not the liking.
Precisely. Think about that feeling before you check your phone or grab that cookie, that anticipation, that urge.
Yeah.
That's dopamine at work. The brain flags the potential reward, which reinforces the behavior, makes you want to do it again. And interestingly, it's not always about genuine need. Our brains can get kind of hooked on novelty, pushing us to seek more, even when it doesn't really help us or align with, say, our learning goals.
Okay, that distinction is huge. It's the drive, the motivation. But then, chasing this constantly, that's where the problems start. It messes with our internal balance.
Totally. The brain is incredibly adaptive, right? So when you keep hitting it with intense pleasure signals, that pleasure-pain balance she talks about, like a seesaw, starts to tilt.
How so?
Well, your baseline dopamine level can actually drop. And at the same time, you can become more sensitive to pain or discomfort.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like the brain turns down the volume on everyday contentment and cranks up the volume on negative feelings. So things that used to feel good don't quite hit the same.
And minor annoyances feel bigger.
Exactly. And this makes it harder to stick with things that require sustained effort, like learning something new, because the immediate dopamine hit isn't there and the potential frustration feels amplified.
So we end up needing stronger and stronger stimuli just to feel okay, and the baseline feeling when we're not getting stimulated is kind of negative. And this isn't just about, hard drugs.
Not at all. That's a major point Lembke makes. Addiction isn't just substances, it's a spectrum. Yeah, think about behaviors. Compulsively scrolling TikTok, binge-watching shows, constantly checking online stores, even overworking, maybe.
Things lots of us do.
Right. These things can hijack the same dopamine pathways. They can become compulsive patterns, even in people who seem totally fine, high functioning on the surface. But it chips away at well-being and the ability to engage deeply elsewhere.
It really reframes everyday habits, doesn't it? She uses case studies, right? Ordinary people struggling with these patterns.
Yes, and they're incredibly powerful. They show how these seemingly small things can escalate, how we might not even realize how dependent we've become until it starts seriously impacting our mood, our relationships, or our ability to focus on, anything else for a sustained period, like learning.
Okay. So we're living in this dopamine nation, easily tipped off balance, making focus and deep engagement a real challenge. Let's move to part 2 then, the price of pleasure and the path back to balance. Where does Lembke suggest we start? Seems like honesty is key.
Absolutely fundamental. She talks about radical honesty because dishonesty, lying to ourselves or others about these habits, just fuels the cycle.
Oh, so.
It keeps us disconnected from reality, avoids confronting what's really going on. Being radically honest, just telling the truth about the struggle, is like step 1 for taking back control, for redirecting our attention.
And linked to that is abstinence.
Yeah.
She mentions a dopamine fast.
Sounds intense.
It does sound intense, but the concept is pretty straightforward. It's basically taking a deliberate break from a specific behavior that's messing with your dopamine system.
Okay, pick one thing.
Yeah, pick one thing. The idea is to give your brain's reward pathways a chance to reset, to kind of recalibrate their sensitivity.
How long does that take?
She suggests around 30 days can often be enough to notice a real difference. Restore that baseline dopamine level, improve mood, maybe make it easier to find pleasure in simpler things again. Things crucial for, focusing on learning or work.
A mental reset button. That makes sense. But it's not just about stopping the bad stuff, is it? She also talks about the value of pain, discomfort. That feels counterintuitive.
It really does, especially in our comfort-obsessed culture.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lembke reframes pain not as something to just avoid, but as essential for growth, resilience, and even for enhancing pleasure later.
Huh. How does that work?
She talks about adaptive pain. Think about things like cold showers, intense exercise, maybe intermittent fasting, things that are intentionally uncomfortable.
Right, things people do for health benefits.
Exactly. These controlled stressors, they don't just make you tougher mentally, they can actually help rebalance your neurochemistry, boost dopamine in a healthier, more sustainable way than, say, scrolling Instagram for hours.
So it's not about suffering, but about challenging the system in a controlled way. Like exercise makes muscles stronger.
Precisely. It builds resilience. And she argues that real, lasting happiness often comes from purpose, discipline, delayed gratification things that usually involve some discomfort, not just from constant ease. Tolerating that discomfort is also pretty key for pushing through challenges and learning, right?
Makes sense. But relying purely on willpower to avoid the easy pleasures.
That's hard. We're surrounded. This is where self-binding comes in.
Yes, exactly. Lembke is realistic about willpower. It's finite. Self-binding is about intentionally creating obstacles, making it harder to indulge impulsively.
Like practical barriers.
Yeah. Temporal ones like no screens after 8 p.m. Spatial ones like no phone in the bedroom or don't eat at your desk. Categorical, like maybe deleting a shopping app.
So you're designing your environment to help you, not fight you.
You got it.
Right.
Creating friction. Making it less automatic to slip into those dopamine loops that pull you away from, focused work or learning. She even mentions Ulysses tying himself to the mast to resist the sirens. It's about acknowledging our vulnerability and setting up guardrails. I like that. Okay. And related to embracing discomfort, there's pressing on the pain side. What does she mean by that?
It builds on the adaptive pain idea. By choosing to engage in effortful things that might feel like pain initially, whether physical or mental exertion, we can actually boost our dopamine levels in a more sustained way over time.
So the effort itself becomes rewarding.
Yes, eventually. Think about the feeling after a really tough workout, or finally cracking a difficult problem. That satisfaction, that clarity, that involves dopamine, but earned through effort, not just consumed passively. It builds resilience. She mentions hormesis, small stresses leading to adaptation.
She gives examples, right? People finding healthier highs.
Yeah, stories of people recovering from addiction who find real joy and balance through things like long-distance running or cold water swimming. Activities that are initially hard, definitely uncomfortable, but ultimately lead to deep well-being and help them engage more fully in life.
Wow. So struggle can actually lead to a more balanced system. And this ties back to honesty again, doesn't it?
Absolutely, because secrecy is where these compulsive behaviors thrive. Radical honesty breaks that.
Oh.
Being truthful, even when it's hard, builds integrity. It connects you back to yourself and potentially to others if you share it. It reduces that internal conflict, that anxiety that often drives the cycle and distracts us.
Right.
Lembke shares stories from her practice, patients feeling this huge sense of relief after admitting something they'd hidden, gambling debts, a vaping habit, whatever. It's often a real turning point towards getting back control and focus.
Confronting the truth, even the uncomfortable truth, seems vital for getting back on track and being able to engage more deeply. Now, she also critiques our modern obsession with just pursuing happiness directly.
She does. The argument is that chasing pleasure for its own sake, without any connection to meaning or purpose, often just leads to feeling empty.
Interesting.
She contrasts that fleeting pleasure with the deeper satisfaction that comes from meaningful effort, even if that effort involves discomfort. Pleasure then becomes like a byproduct of connection or mastery or contribution.
Not the goal itself.
Exactly. She's quite critical of consumer culture, pushing this idea that happiness is just one more purchase away, suggesting it actually fuels mental health issues and hinders our ability to find satisfaction in things like learning or building something meaningful.
So shift the focus from just feeling good now to building a meaningful life, and the good feelings might follow more sustainably. And that supports engagement too. Which brings us back to the dopamine fast. How would someone actually do one?
Okay, so the steps are pretty clear. First, you identify one specific behavior you think is problematic for you, something that's maybe interfering with your focus or well-being.
Just one to start.
Yeah, usually best to start small. Then, you commit to abstaining completely from that behavior for a set period. Lemke suggests about 30 days is a good target.
Okay, 30 days. Then what?
Pay attention during that time. You might feel withdrawal, irritability, boredom, anxiety. Lemke says that's actually a sign the reset is working, that your brain was dependent.
Okay, so expect some discomfort.
Right. And then after the 30 days, you mindfully decide if and how you want to reintroduce that behavior. Maybe you find you don't miss it much, or you can engage with it way less intensely in a way that doesn't derail your focus on other things.
It sounds like a powerful way to regain some control and self-awareness. So, pulling all this together, what are the core secrets to balance in this dopamine nation?
Well, it's not really secrets, more like principles. First, know your triggers, what sets you off.
Right, self-awareness.
Then, create friction. Make the impulsive stuff harder to do. Embrace healthy discomfort exercise challenges. Practice radical honesty. Always.
Okay.
And fundamentally, shift your focus from chasing pleasure to seeking meaning and connection. And remember, the brain can change. She talks about plasticity. Using tools like daily check-ins, maybe accountability partners, scheduled breaks, routines. These things can help rewire those pathways over time.
So it's an ongoing practice, not a one-time fix, but it offers a way to navigate this world more intentionally, to support that capacity for deep focus and engagement. And it seems like this isn't just about individual optimization. There's a connection piece.
Huge. That's really how she wraps things up. True. Lasting joy often comes from connection, community, contribution, not just solo pleasure seeking.
How does that work neurochemically?
Giving to others, being part of something larger, can actually be neurochemically balancing. It's an antidote to the isolation that often comes with addiction or despair. Support networks, altruism, they feed a different kind of reward circuit.
A more sustainable one.
Exactly. She shares stories of people finding real purpose and joy through service. The reward is in the giving, the connection, which in turn strengthens our ability to engage meaningfully with the world, including learning and growing.
Really powerful ideas. Okay, so recapping our deep dive into Dopamine Nation. We've looked at how our brains handle pleasure and pain, why our modern world can so easily throw us off balance, and crucially, some really practical strategies Dr. Lembke offers. Strategies to find balance, improve focus, and maybe enhance our ability to learn and engage.
Yeah, it's a call to be more aware of these forces in our lives, right?
Yeah.
And to be intentional about using things like self-binding, embracing useful discomfort, being honest, and really prioritizing what gives life meaning over just the next quick hit.
It really empowers you, the listener, to look at your own patterns and think about maybe trying some of these ideas to live a more balanced, focused, and fulfilling life.
That's certainly food for thought.
And to leave you with something to chew on. How might understanding this neuroscience of pleasure and pain actually shift how you approach building connections or contributing to things you care about? How might that, in turn, deepen your own learning and engagement?
Good question.
As we said, if you want to go deeper, please support Dr. Lembke by getting a copy of Dopamine Nation. The link is right there in the description.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration.
BookCast FM, bringing books to life one cast at a time.